Good day, my name is Christelle and I'm from France de Klerk Independent Technical Analyst. Ray wanted us to look at the Rand dollar, and we can see this USD ZAR currency pair is caught within a descending channel at the moment. Now technically that 40-week moving average is weighting very closely to that upper band, and Ray, that highlights the importance of that resistance. Technically, the strength of the Rand will remain in place as long as it consolidates below that 1456 level. Only when the Rand starts to weaken in above this 1456 level again can we expect more weakness. What is the target of that channel? It's the width of the channel projected upwards from more or less where it is confirmed. So that we can see that this channel, descending channel, can easily take the Rand back to about 1539. Yes, the Rand is extremely overbought at the moment, so we can expect more weakness to the upside. But interesting enough, we might also be sitting here with a possible head and shoulder formation. This might be the left shoulder, a massive head, and let's say the Rand bounces and retraces again. This neckline would be a critical level to keep an eye on. Should the Rand strengthen in below 1390, we can see even lower levels. Now we know that, it can easily maybe bounce to about 1456, maybe even the psychological level of 15. Nobody knows how high it's going to bounce. Only when the Rand starts to continue to consolidate above 15 Rand, the negativity or the optimism, depending what you want the Rand to do, will be wiped off the table. So Ray, my first level of weakness would be above 1556, which is that upper band, as well as that level of the 40 moving average. 15 Rand, even more weakness, and then possible strength is completely wiped off the table. But don't forget this 1390 level. If the Rand continues to strengthen below 1390, we can see a lot lower levels. Now, I know we might be preempting it, but also have a look that we might be sitting here with a massive double top on the Rand, which means we can easily see levels at about even 1260 going forward. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what the Rand does in 2020. A lot of analysts believe that maybe the dollar will continue to weaken, which will support our view of maybe a stronger Rand, but only above 1556 weakness, and especially above 15, we can almost assume that the weakness will continue going forward. Michael wanted us to look at Rhodes Foods. Now, Rhodes is a very thin share. There's not a lot of volume, but interesting enough, Michael, Rhodes Foods have been consolidating in this band since about the September 2018. Now, I've also drawn in here a diagonal trend line because that is quite a strong line that has been tested a couple of times. So only when Rhodes Foods starts to change that level of around 1698 into a support, we can assume that maybe it can go and test this strong level around 1783 and then maybe even higher levels. What worries me is the fact that Rhodes Foods have been struggling for years to change and keep that 40-week moving average, that red line, into a support. My stochastic is in no man's land, so I'm going to ignore that for the time being. But that level there around 1887 is a critical level that needs to change into a support. So a possible target for this consolidation base is obviously the length of or the width of the consolidation base projected upwards from where it is confirmed. So let's say Rhodes Foods does change that 1774 levels into a support. You can expect a reasonable target of about 2157. Obviously, the vice versa is also possible when this lower band waiting there around 14 Rand and 5 cents. When that changes into a resistance, I will be very concerned about Rhodes Foods, and we can see that same target maybe to the bottom. Vic and many other viewers wanted us to look at DRDGold. Now, we said last year, if the gold price continues to rise, these gold miners of ours can continue the massive rally to the top. Now, we are sitting here with a pennant, a bullish pennant formation, or some might call it a bullish flag formation. What that is, Vic, is it normally appears it's a pause period within an overall uptrend. So when the shares change that 40-week moving average, the red line on this weekly graph, when DRD changed that into a support at around 3 Rand 10 cents, it just continued to rally. And there we can also see, if I zoom that out, a little bit of a pause period, another bullish flag, and it just rallied even more. So DRD confirmed that bullish flag at around 7 Rand 57. And what we can assume now is that the momentum, the overall trend of the upside might even continue more. So if I zoom out, what will support that view of even higher levels on DRD is a possible inverse head and shoulder formation. So if I draw in here, here's my left shoulder, and I extend this line, I might be sitting here with a massive inverse head and shoulder formation. I've got, let me draw that for you. Here's my left shoulder, tested that strong neckline, the resistance of it, massive head, tested the neckline again, found resistance, pulled back, found support, and again changed that neckline now into a support. That means the optimism of this formation is in play, and we can see a lot higher levels. Keep in mind, it took DRDGold about more than 3 years to build on this formation. That means it can take more or less, again, another 3 years to play it out completely to the top. My first conservative target of this formation is this window that is waiting there. And that window is waiting between 10 Rand 49 and the low of about 10 Rand 52. So those couple of cents on a weekly graph is a possible target for DRD. Why do I call that a target? Because it's a window, it's a gap on the graph. That means there was no trading that took place. And a window always gets closed. It can take days, weeks, months, or even decades. But those are nice targets that speculators or investors can use for possible targets to the upside or downside. So those are possible targets. When will DRD be a concern again? Obviously, when it starts to consolidate below this upper band of this flag formation, there around 7 Rand 60, then I would be a little bit concerned. Keep in mind, Vic, my share is almost overbought, but take note, my 2 moving averages within my stochastic is still pointing upwards. There's no sign of a divergence yet, but if it is overbought, it means, and especially if there's a divergence, it means the probability of the share to pull back is more likely. Murray wanted us to look at Assore. So last year, Murray, this was one of my favorite shares because they've got such a strong dividend yield. It was nicely oversold. So there's a couple of things that are positive as well as negative on Assore. One, we're still sitting with this massive, well, almost double top. Some might not call this a head, so it might be just a double top. Some might call it a triple top, depending on where you want to find that support. But I've drawn in this horizontal line because I think if you look at the amount of points it's tested, that 262 Rand 20, is a very strong support line. And that level needs to remain a support in order for us to believe that this momentum to the top can continue. Now, this is a weekly graph of Assore. If you look at a daily graph, you will see that there is a small inverse head and shoulder formation. And that inverse head and shoulder formation can take the share back to this red line, the 40-week moving average. And we know for long-term investors, that is the line in the sand. That is the sentiment gauge. Above it, we can assume that the momentum and the long-term sentiment towards the share has changed to positive, and below it, it will remain negative. So yes, Assore is overbought at the moment. My 2 stochastics are still pointing upwards. It looks like that blue line wants to lose momentum, but it hasn't broken downwards yet. So I'm still fairly comfortable. And then obviously that strong next resistance there is waiting around 277 Rand 80. With this strong dividend yield, I think this share might become a favorite again and maybe even be supported. But I would keep that level around 262 Rand as a strong support. And then obviously, when these low levels at around 280.96 changes into a resistance again, that would be a concern. Because why? Then I will have the next lower high. So what is a lower high? It's a bounce, so it's a pullback and a bounce. And let's say Assore finds resistance and could not find enough buyers to lift it again, and it pulls back again. the fact that it might change this previous support into a resistance is seen as a lower high, and that is seen as negative. So maybe it bounces again, pull back. That is all negative formations or negative signs that indicates and implies a loss of momentum. So at the moment, these are the two critical levels I will keep in place for Assore, and maybe we can quickly have a look at that daily graph, and I'll show you what that looks like, Murray. So this daily graph, if I move that up, my neckline would be, and I might have to change that line. Let's just do that quickly, because I think that the neckline is a little bit skew. It's not that horizontal, but let's give it a strong left shoulder. There you go. So technically, my left shoulder is sitting here, strong neckline, tested there, pulled back, massive head, tested there a couple of times, but let's call that one, and then maybe another right shoulder. We can even move that a little bit lower. What is the targets of Assore then? I can use the conservative target. I can choose the left or the right shoulder. So let's choose the smallest one of the two, and I take my right shoulder and I project it upwards from where my neckline is confirmed, in assuming the share now changes that neckline, waiting there around 275 Rand 45 into a support. It can take Assore to 302 Rand and 10 cents. What is my full target of the formation? It's the length of the head projected upwards from where it might be confirmed, and that can take Assore to 341 Rand 51. Remember, those are possible targets. It's not a definite science, but those are possible levels. And if I look here, there's also a window on my daily graph, which might even confirm that possible target.